I'm Shelley Alexander. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Calgary in the Department of Geography. Banff has been examining the effectiveness of mitigation. For example, is an overpass better than an underpass for different species? Their data does address that question, but in terms of the effectiveness of a crossing, of a mitigation effort, I do not believe we've been successful. Although I've only done one analysis on this, my findings suggested that the movement rates on the mitigated section of Phase 3A are significantly lower than the movement rates on the Phase 3B. So that means that by fencing and by putting in the mitigation structures, we've actually reduced connectivity significantly relative to doing nothing. At the same time, we've reduced mortality, which is a good thing, but we still need to maintain or restore connectivity. And over time, if things can't move back and forth between the patches, they become more and more prone to extinction. The image that you see here shows individual species of carnivores, marten, lynx, cougar, and wolf, and every possible combination of those. What we were trying to do here is find where are the multi-species zones that need to be mitigated, and then we've overlaid on top the proposed mitigation sites in the Parks Canada plan. If there's been a secondary crossing structure proposed in a site, what species, based on our ground data, are actually going to be captured there? What we found overall is that some of the sites are lining up well with multi-species crossing zones, but there are, in many cases, mismatch between the multi-species zone and the type of mitigation. And so the best strategy is to use the largest crossing structure form that we can and place them in the optimal site so that they have the best opportunity to be successful.
Well, we feel, based on our research results, the existing structures on Phase 1 and 2 and Phase 3A are functional, and based on the fact that they're reducing wildlife mortality of all species, greater than 80% reductions, and based on the level of connectivity that we're seeing of all these species using these structures, at least the species that we expect to be using them that are in this part of the Bow Valley.
The debate has always been how large the structures could be, and ideally, of course, we'd all like to have them bigger. The structures this time around are going to be bigger than the ones from the last phase of the Trans-Canada Highway. I'd like to see them a little bit bigger, but finances dictate that they're not going to be a whole bunch bigger than what the last ones were. So we'll go through this age-old debate of how big the crossing structure should be, and we'll never solve that now. It's just a matter of finances and priorities.
Parks Canada, and especially Tony Clevenger as an individual, have done some of the best research in the world researching the nature of the design of crossing structures. But unless that's applied in actual construction, we really haven't solved the problem. Perhaps wider crossing structures are one of the answers. In Europe, crossing structures between 50 and 100 meters have had outstanding success in certain areas, such as Croatia is one example. But it's not just the width, it's the integration of the structure into the landscape and the integration with the characteristics that each individual species responds to in order to design a good crossing structure. This is a fascinating problem, and one that we must solve in order to maintain the wildlife as we know it in places like Banff National Park.
The current transportation model is unsustainable. Simple math will tell you that 2 to 2.5% increases in traffic volume each year. In 25 years, we've doubled our traffic volume. We have 30,000 vehicles per day on this highway, 8 lanes of traffic, and that's just ecologically unsustainable.
So the overall problem is overwhelming human presence, and so we have to, in the long term, restrict our activity in order to give bears more space in this valley. Because there's so many competing interests for that one piece of ground, and everybody wants to have their own piece of the pie, especially recreationists. This is not going to be easy down the road.
I'm Elaine McCoy. I'm president of the MacLeod Institute. The Bow Corridor Regional Mobility Strategy is an effort of the Municipal District of Bighorn and the towns of Canmore and Banff and Parks Canada. What they reached out to us for was a long-term strategy that would help move more people and more animals through the corridor in the next 20 to 30 years. What we suggested is that if your destination is Banff or Canmore or Lake Louise or anywhere in that whole corridor, then you will need to use some form of other transportation once you get there. You can drive there, but once you're there, you must use pedestrian facilities or bicycle facilities. And so you just minimize the use of mechanized transport.
We haven't yet reached a point where we can say we have the answer. This continues to be an experiment. It will be years before we can really judge the adequacy of what we've done. We're running the risk that we will be compromising the welfare of wildlife for decades, perhaps centuries to come, and that could be the type of thing which leads to species endangerment and ultimately the breakdown of the ecosystem if we're not careful.
I think the issue is engaging society in expressing values that show that wildlife means something to Albertans, and having convincing science that there really is a problem. Then maybe we can really influence the decisions that are going to be crucial to the future of wildlife in Alberta.